now, without any further delay, I would like to turn today's event over to your presenter, Grant Earl. Grant, you now have the floor.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm Grant Earl, and today we're going to be continuing Neudesic's SharePoint webcast series when we talk about SharePoint 2010 and some of the new mobility features that are included in it. So just to go over the summary of today's webcast, more than ever users are accessing data from outside the traditional workplace environment, and SharePoint 2010 provides a rich mobile experience that enables information workers to stay connected no matter what tools or devices they have available. And today in this webcast we'll explore some of those enhancements for mobility in SharePoint 2010, and those include enhanced mobile browser support, the SharePoint Workspace mobile client, and the exciting new Office web applications. Just to review, the target audience for today's webcast is IT decision maker. It'll be mostly high-level features that we talk about, though I did see on the registration that there were some developers signed up, so we'll touch on some of the development aspects for mobility in SharePoint 2010 as well. About me, I'm Grant Earl, and I'm the Regional Practice Director for Portals and Collaboration here in Southern California for Neudesic. A little bit about Neudesic. Neudesic is a gold certified managed national systems integrator for Microsoft. We have 14 offices throughout the country. We're based right here in Irvine, California. Our bread and butter is Microsoft services, so anything in the Microsoft stack we provide services for. As I said, I'm part of the leadership for the Portals and Collaboration team, and that includes Microsoft Office and Microsoft SharePoint solutions. And we'll talk briefly about some of our Portals and Collaboration solutions at the end of the webcast. Diving into today's agenda, what we're going to be talking about is defining what is mobile in SharePoint 2010. Well, there are many facets to mobile in 2010, and those include mobile browsing, Office WebApps, SharePoint Workspace 2010, and Office Mobile Client 2010. So we'll be diving into each of those in some depth. After that, we'll have a demo covering several scenarios that we talk about from each of those facets. Then we'll talk about some of the next steps that you can take to make yourselves familiar with what we talk about today. And then we'll have some question and answer session to address anything that you might want to talk about from today's session or any SharePoint 2010 questions in general that you might have. So what is mobile in SharePoint 2010? Well, it helps to go back a little ways, all the way back to 2007. That's ages ago in the SharePoint landscape. And 2000 itself was a quantum leap over 2003. But 2010 promises to be as big or bigger in terms of a generational shift from the previous product. So mobile in 2007 was passable. There was a mobile version for all of your sites out of the box. You simply append the /m, and SharePoint would automatically render a mobile-enabled view of your site. Any list view could be configured as mobile. You could create a new list view, or you could modify the ones that came out of the box to render as mobile. Another aspect of mobility in the 2007 landscape was Groove. So Groove was a product, if you're not familiar with it, that Microsoft acquired several years ago to solve some of the offline scenarios that people were having. So working on documents, collaborating on documents out of the office, offline, from an airplane or from home, that's what Groove really solved. So offline collaboration was a strategic acquisition with Groove. Excel Services also brought the Office suite closer to being mobile enabled. Excel Services allowed you to upload a document, a spreadsheet up to SharePoint, and then that could be rendered through the browser. And Excel Services still exists in SharePoint 2010. It's a service application now, along with Word, Access, PowerPoint, and Visio. So all of those document types can be rendered through the browser now. And we'll talk more in depth about that with the Office WebApps section of the webcast today. So what do we have today in 2010? Well, the mobile browsing experience has been enhanced quite a bit. Groove is now called SharePoint Workspace 2010. Office WebApps, this is probably the biggest new capability of SharePoint 2010. It allows for full fidelity rendering of Office documents, including spreadsheets and Word documents, and gives you a rich editing experience as well. So from anywhere, through your extranet, through your intranet, you can expose these documents and make them available for not only viewing, but also editing. And then Office Mobile. Office Mobile gives you mobile versions of Word, Excel, OneNote, and SharePoint Workspace also. So you really can collaborate from anywhere. So let's dive into some of these features. Mobile browsing. Mobile browsing in 2007, it wasn't dynamic. So if you navigated to a SharePoint site from a mobile device, it would give you the full fidelity version of the site. You had to specifically go to the /m version to get the mobile view. Now in 2010, using dynamic user agent recognition, SharePoint redirects you automatically to the mobile site based on your browser. So as you can see here with these screenshots, I've navigated on the left here using Internet Explorer on my desktop to my site. And then on the right, you'll see I've navigated to the same site using my iPhone. Yes, they even support the Apple devices. So my Fruit phone automatically redirected to the mobile version, and I get, it's not as Ajaxified or rich as the desktop version, but it does give me a passable view of my site. To force the mobile view, you can append this query string and get the mobile view in your desktop web browser, which is something we'll do for the demo a bit later. In 2010, really adheres to all of the standards of XHTML and the W3C, so it's compatible with quite a few more browsers. And that's important because Office WebApps especially needs to be able to render to a host of different devices. So whereas 2007 was really, you could display it in Firefox and Safari, it just didn't look quite right. 2010 is a real shift in terms of compatibility with different devices. So Tier 1 support for browsers like Firefox, Safari, Opera, etc. A bit more about mobile browsing. SharePoint detects in your user agent, that's your browser, the is mobile browser attribute, and redirects you according to that. Additional browsers, say you create a custom browser, they can be added for SharePoint to detect. Or if you don't like how SharePoint's redirecting some of your sites, you can force those redirects by modifying the browser definitions. These two screenshots here show on the left the mobile experience in 2007, and on the right the mobile experience in 2010. They look essentially the same. It's a little bit more, it's presented a bit more nicely in 2010, and you see the option to add a filter as well in 2010, and we'll dive into that later in the demo to see what exactly that capability is. So what are the Office web apps? Office web apps allow viewing and editing of your Office 2010 documents, and that includes Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and OneNote, directly through your browser. So that's important because, say you're remote or you're at an internet cafe or you don't have access to your work computer that has Office installed, you're out of the office and you really need to approve a presentation or a spreadsheet or a Word document. Using the Office web apps, you can do that. You can go to your extranet, open up the document with Office web apps, and edit it right there, despite the fact that you don't have the Office client installed, the Office client apps installed on your desktop. And as we mentioned before, there is support for Windows Phone, iPhone, BlackBerry, and all your mobile devices. Office web apps are a service application in SharePoint 2010, so if you're not familiar with service applications, they're some of the scalable pieces of the SharePoint puzzle that can be scaled out depending on your usage, turned on and off, and moved about your network topology depending on how you want to set up your SharePoint farm. Office web apps mobile. Those are the Office web apps mobile is what's rendered in your iPhone, your BlackBerry, your mobile devices. This is a read-only experience. The read-write experience is for desktop browser versions of the Office web apps, and it's cross-browser compatible. And this is really the document viewer for cross-device access. And not to be left out of the Office equation is Access. So Access has its own service application that allows migration of old Access apps that might live in the wild of your network that someone's been maintaining for years, and you have to get through it through the network share. Now you can publish those Access apps to SharePoint and get them off of your shared drive and scale those out. So Access in SharePoint allows you to take sort of a halfway step to creating an enterprise application from what was a very primitive database app. So this is just a screenshot of Office web apps rendering an Excel workbook. You can see that there's a rich experience here. Individual cells and graphs are rendered, as well as the familiar Office ribbon UI, which was made familiar to everyone in the Office 2007 client. So if you haven't seen it yet, SharePoint 2010 provides the ribbon UI throughout. It's pervasive navigation, and that helps really make SharePoint 2010 a very small learning curve for your users because they're familiar with all of the tools already from using Office. So some more about Office web apps. Windows Phone versus other devices. Windows Phone provides you with the Office mobile client that we'll talk about later, and that gives you read and write, rich UI, and also on the Windows Phone you have the Office 2010 mobile viewers, which is the read-only experience. So other devices including iPhone, BlackBerry, and other mobiles are read-only. So you don't have the read-write of the Windows Phone. So that's where the power of the Office Mobile client comes in. So on other devices, you only get the mobile viewer and the read-only experience. So that's just an important thing to note when you're deciding upon your mobile strategy for the future. So what is SharePoint Workspace 2010? We mentioned that it's the evolution of Groove, but it really is just that. It's a real evolution. It's a generational shift. So it's a rich experience. You get drag and drop and very fast performance because it is all right on your desktop and gives you all the benefits of a rich client. Cut and paste, drag and drop, everything that you're used to from your Office clients. Offline, this is the biggest benefit for most. You can sync up to your SharePoint sites, your document libraries. You can determine very granularly what exactly you want to sync up in your SharePoint sites and bring all of those directly to your desktop so that you can take your content offline, so that if you're on a plane or something, you can edit and check out and check in just like you're in the office. And overcoming low bandwidth. It's a great way to replicate content on the desktop, and it synchronizes in the background. Why is that important? Because it doesn't take up the time of within the client with synchronization. It does all that in the background so that you can continue to work. And you don't have to worry about large file downloads over a high latency network. So my favorite analogy that I've heard about SharePoint Workspace is that it's like using Outlook web access rather than your Outlook client. So if you've got the option, why wouldn't you use the client? And when you pair it with SharePoint Designer 2010, both of these rich clients offer quite a bit of capability for managing and administering and viewing content in SharePoint 2010. But there are still some things that you can't do in SharePoint Workspace 2010 that the browser is still a bit better for, like creating lists and creating documents and some of those traditional things you've always done with SharePoint. So here's some screenshots from SharePoint Workspace 2010. On the left, if you're familiar with Groove, this will be a very familiar site. This is essentially what the Groove UI was in 2007. And this is where you start and sync up. But once you've created a site, over here on the right, this is what you'll see for your UI. You can see it gives you your list of documents, document libraries and lists and external lists, and it comes across with all of your custom content types, all of your documents, and all of the customizations that you've made through the SharePoint browser and UI. And we'll take a deep dive into this when we go into the demo in a little bit. So the Office Mobile 2010 clients, as I said, these are only available on the Windows Phone 7 platform, but they give you some exciting capabilities that haven't been available before. You'll see sprinkled around here, I've got several screenshots going clockwise from the top. We see Word Mobile. So you can actually go in and view, check out, modify, and check back in. You know, very basic modifications. You can't change themes or apply add-ins or anything like that, but it gives you a very powerful capability to work mobile directly from your Windows phone. And then there's also OneNote mobile capability. So the same thing, you can go in and modify your OneNote documents. And then finally, and the screenshot that's obviously the most exciting here is Excel. It's got the pretty chart. You see you can modify individual cells and then check those right back into SharePoint. Another exciting feature with the Office Mobile clients is PowerPoint Mobile 2010 and its Presentation Companion. So what you can do here is connect your Windows phone to your PC via Bluetooth, and while you're giving a presentation, like I'm giving this presentation, I could use my Windows phone to view the notes. So I could be up at the podium and walking around the room and checking my notes on my phone, and then I can even advance slides using the phone. So it really gives you a nice addition to your tool belt if you give a lot of presentations. And there's no learning curve because everyone's familiar with how to use Office, and this is really an extension of the Office experience that everyone's familiar with. Okay, we talked about the Office Mobile Suite, but let's really dive into the SharePoint Workspace mobile client. So we see here in this little graphic the entire Office Mobile Suite, and we've touched on everything else: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. So the final piece of the puzzle is SharePoint Workspace Mobile. So what can you do? Just like with the others, you can view, you can access, and change stuff. Viewing document libraries and lists. You can quickly connect your SharePoint server to access content from anywhere. So this is very powerful because you can see all of your team's documents and all of your team's collateral directly from your Windows phone. You can access documents over the air, so you don't have to be directly connected anymore. You can access this over a 3G network. You can open documents using Office Mobile directly from SharePoint, edit them and save them back to the server pretty easily. And then it also has the offline capability as well. So just like the full client version of SharePoint Workspace, you can take this offline, make your changes, and then when you get back online, you can sync your changes up. So any changes are saved back to SharePoint automatically when you go back online. You can keep a document synced locally, so when members of your team change it, you'll automatically have the most recent version of the truth, and so you'll always be up to date. Now, some of these screenshots down here display some of what we talked about. The one on the left is accessing multiple sites and libraries. This is just a listing of all the sites. And then the one in the middle drills down into some of the libraries within one of those sites. And then finally, we see on the rightmost view a listing of documents from one of those sites. So just to sum it up, this is a capability that's really revolutionary in the SharePoint world, giving you access to your documents from anywhere. And in conjunction with the SharePoint Workspace Fit client on your desktop or your laptop, this is a really powerful set of technologies for your road warriors or anyone that's out of the office frequently but needs to stay up to date. So just to touch on mobile development for any developers, for any of those developers that I saw on the registration list, and what is mobile development for SharePoint 2010? What does that mean? Well, there's an entirely separate set of controls just for mobile pages. This is something new from the SharePoint 2007 world. where creating controls was a little difficult, to say the least. Normal controls, just like they did in 2007, still come from the Microsoft.SharePoint.Web Controls namespace. But in SharePoint Foundation, mobile controls are in the Microsoft.SharePoint.Mobile Controls namespace. This is a completely new namespace, and these inherit from the System.Web.UI.Mobile Controls namespace. So these are all optimized for the mobile experience. Mobile pages can also have controls that approximately duplicate the behavior of web parts on non-mobile web part pages. These are called mobile web part adapters and render only on mobile web pages. When you're creating your mobile web parts, these should inherit from the web part mobile adapter class. And when you're viewing a page in your mobile browser, non-mobile parts are stripped from the mobile view. So this is kind of cool. You can define a web part in SharePoint and then tell SharePoint what mobile part to render in its stead when being viewed in a mobile device. So this is just a sample of the definition that tells SharePoint what mobile part to use instead of the full fidelity part. So just briefly, we'll talk about some of. Actually, let's go back and do the demo. Looks like I missed my demo cue slide here. So at this point, we'll go to our demo, and we'll just run through some of the scenarios that we talked about here. Let me switch to my desktop. Okay, so for anyone that's downloaded the beta bits of SharePoint 2010 server or SharePoint 2010 Foundation, this will be a familiar screen. This is just one of the out-of-the-box team sites. Nothing too special about this. But you'll see that if we append, like I mentioned previously, this query string, we'll force it to render in a mobile view. Okay, so here's our mobile view, and you'll see that we forced it to go mobile, and it's low fidelity, but you'll see we still get all of our content, and because I'm a site admin, I get these choices to modify the site. Okay, so going back to the full-featured site, let's navigate to my shared documents, where I've uploaded a couple of different Office document types. And because I've downloaded and installed the Office WebApps, I can now view these documents in one of two ways. I can go and open this in the Word Thick client, and this is how you would do it in the 2007 era. Oops, so let me log in here. So nothing fantastic about that. But because I have my Office Web Apps installed, when I click directly on the link, this is going to open it up using Office Web Apps. So this is a configurable option. So if you have Web Apps installed, you can choose whether or not to by default, show your users a document in Office Web Apps or not. So you can see that it displays exactly like it did in the Thick client. You don't lose anything there. It's full fidelity. It's using the OpenXML format. And then I have this edit button here as well. So I click that, and I get the ribbon, or a limited ribbon, because we don't get everything from the Thick client. But just about everything most people need. So we'll wait for it to render out here. A couple more seconds. And there it is. So the ribbon has several tabs with some pared down buttons, but as far as all the formatting that anyone would usually need to do, it's all there. What you can't do are things like tracking changes. Those documents will not render because the Office web apps do not support the track changes, among a few other things. So now we can open this in Word directly, or we can save it and go back about our business. But this just gives you a good idea of what your outside, external, or VPN users can do when they're connected to your SharePoint site. Go back to Reading View. Let's go back to our document library here, and let's open up our Excel workbook here. Wait a few seconds for it to render. Okay, let's go scroll back over here, find our content. Okay, so let's open it up in Excel just to demonstrate that we're not losing anything. Here it goes. So switching between the two, this is rendered strictly in the browser, and this is the Excel Fit client. You'll see that they're identical. And we have full editing capabilities here in the browser as well. Click Edit. We get the ribbon. And cell by cell, we can do just about anything. One of the notable things that the Excel Office web app does not support are macros. Excel Services in 2007 didn't support that either, and that's just an obvious security risk. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of some of the full fidelity options available in the Office web apps. So now, stepping back to the mobile version, we'll pretend that we're in a mobile client here and force it to render the mobile version of the site. And because we're in the mobile version of the site, it knows to render everything in a mobile fashion. So now we'll see what these documents look like for our mobile viewers. Someone with an iPhone, for instance, would see this. So it's not, it isn't an exact duplicate of what you would see in the regular Office web app viewer, but for someone on a mobile device, this is fantastic because it gives you visibility into these documents that you would otherwise have to have a laptop for. Now in the Office mobile apps for your Windows phone, we saw how you get the read right, but because we're not in the Windows phone with the mobile apps, this is the read-only view that everyone else would see, someone with an iPhone or a BlackBerry. Page through, we do basic things like find. We can view all of the images, and we can see the document properties. So just about everything we would need to do from a read-only basis is available to us here in the mobile viewer on our mobile phone. And now doing the same thing with our Excel. We see that it renders nicely. We get all the cells and we get all the content still. And it gives us just some basic navigational options so that we can navigate from our tiny little UI on our phone there. Okay, so that's the Office web apps experience and the mobile experience going through a browser. Let's take a look at SharePoint Workspace now. So if I go to my remote session here, I've already launched SharePoint Workspace, and again, this is very familiar to those of you who have used Groove. This is basically the Groove client. If I say New SharePoint Workspace, it gives me some options. Some of my favorite SharePoint sites here are my site, and I can also enter in a URL. One of the interesting things in the browser version here is the, let's see here, let's go back to Home. And let's go to our shared documents. And from our library, we can sync to our SharePoint Workspace directly. You'll see that this control is currently disabled because what's nice about SharePoint from an administrator's point of view is the capability to only allow certain sites to be synced up. So if you don't want all of this content being taken offline for security or other reasons, you can restrict that. So going back to our Workspace 2010 client, we're just going to go ahead and specify our intranet site here. Hit OK. And it requests confirmation that we want to sync the site with our computer. Of course we do. Okay, so now we see the progress of all the lists and everything that are coming over. And you'll see these two lists here, calendar and site pages. Some lists in SharePoint are not supported for syncing. Calendar and site pages are two special list types in SharePoint. Calendars are really, you can view those using Outlook. So that's the same story as in 2010. Workspace is more document and list based rather than calendar based, so you're not going to get that. And site pages is a specialized list type that users don't need to sync to. That has system pages. Okay, so we'll wait a couple of minutes here. And you'll see that our new site is coming over right now. All right, so we're all done. So now I can open the workspace. Bear with me for a moment. This is always one of the tricky parts of doing a live demo with SharePoint. You never know. Okay, there it is, SharePoint Workspace. So now you'll see that we have all of the lists and libraries from our SharePoint site that we just synced to. Now what we can do, like I mentioned earlier, you have nice drag and drop capabilities. So I can drag this directly into my workspace and then have it made available. Okay. Just thinking about it. And there it is. can right-click that, and I can edit it. And let's go to some of the documents that were on the server. So you'll see that we can check out. We can check the version history. We can check the properties, things that you would have had to go to the browser for in versions past. And really, the whole power of this has not been downloaded. So we're still waiting on this particular document to sync up. But just to reiterate, the real power of this is once everything is synced up, I can take my laptop home with me, not connect to my VPN, go on a plane, work for 4 hours on the plane with all of these documents, checking them out, checking them in, creating new versions, and then once I get back into the office and plug in, SharePoint Workspace will automatically sync up those changes. Okay, so that concludes our demo part of the presentation. So we'll switch back to the slide deck here. Switching. Attempting to switch. There we go. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, Neudesic provides a full service offering around the SharePoint platform. We've been working with SharePoint since the pre-beta days, so we already have quite a bit of SharePoint experience. We employ one of the original members of the SharePoint team. He's actually our national practice director, Simeon Cathy, and he's just a wealth of knowledge around SharePoint and a real thought leader in the SharePoint community. We also do services around the enterprise metadata and taxonomy services that are now available in SharePoint 2010. So making your documents searchable and useful within the organization are some of the things that this can provide you. Effective corporate wikis. So the wiki capability in SharePoint 2007 has been greatly enhanced in 2010, and wikis can really provide a great source of information and collaboration for your organization. Team collaboration, so going from the basic get us out of this email collaboration to really some enhanced workflow capabilities. We've been there and we've done it all, and we can help you with your team's collaboration from just a small team up to the enterprise level. Effective social media. So social media in 2010 is really one of the key points that they've enhanced as well. And with the new My Sites, it's a much more of a modern Web 2.0 look and feel and capability as well. Building a business intelligent enterprise. So SharePoint Insights, which is what they're calling BI, business intelligence, in 2010. That includes some of the things we touched on with Excel services, as well as SQL reporting services, Performance Point, which is now baked into SharePoint, and some of the other KPI and reporting functionality and some of the dashboarding features in 2010. So we have a practice that services all these areas on a daily basis, and we'd love to help you in your company with those features. So next steps, where do we go from here? Where can you start to to get your company going with SharePoint in 2010? Well, you can download the beta, although I did have to edit this slide because it's really sort of outdated today because the RTM is probably coming next week. There hasn't been an official date mentioned, but if you're a Microsoft partner or even have MSDN, the RTM will be available to you sometime next week is what we're hearing. The final release to the public is coming on May the 12th, so that'll be an exciting day. They've worked out a lot of the bugs between the beta and the RC, which is what some of us partners have been playing with, and the change for the public between the beta and the final release will be huge. Many of the bugs that I'm sure you've seen if you've played with it already have been removed, and we're all looking forward to that. But in any case, you can get yourself up and running with the beta very easily. It does install on Windows Vista and Windows 7 now, although some of the enterprise features are not enabled, but that does make it available to those people without Windows Server 2008. Bing it. I didn't say Google it. I said Bing it. We should Bing SharePoint 2010 Mobile. You'll find a lot of the teams within Microsoft have their own blogs. So the enterprise search team has a blog. The Office WebApps team has a blog. The SharePoint team itself has a blog. So there's just a wealth of information about some of the features that are out there and that will be available. And you can Bing SharePoint 2010 install. And then finally, and not least importantly, you can contact Neudesic. Check out our website. That has some of our information and some of our clients that we've done business with in the past, some of our success stories. You can contact me directly, Earl@neudesic.com. Happy to answer any questions you have about the presentation that might not get answered in the Q&A session coming up here, and happy just to talk SharePoint with you. So without further ado, I'd like to take any questions you have. Anyone? No questions? Okay. Some of the questions while we're waiting for live questions. Oh, it looks like we've got some questions here. Bruce Brereton wants to talk about file compatibility. Can Word 2007 work in 2010 okay? How about Access 2007? Yes, that's a great question. That comes up quite a bit, and Word 2007 also uses the OpenXML file format. So just like 2010, that is an out-of-the-box rendering for the Office WebApps. Access 2007 is a binary format. So as I said before, Access is not part of the Office WebApps, but it is. Access has a service application within SharePoint 2010, so that is Access databases are supported, so some of those legacy Access apps throughout your organization, like we mentioned before, you can get those off of your shared drive or off of people's desktops and into SharePoint, providing sort of a stopgap, quote-unquote, enterprise application that can be accessed throughout your organization. So hopefully that answers your question, but yeah, just to review, Word, Excel, any of those 2007 formats are fully supported by the Office WebApps. Any other questions? Thanks, Bruce, for that great question. By the way, that was an important topic to mention. Okay, we answered that. Okay. Can I demo an Access database that is published to the web through SharePoint 2010? I would love to demo that. Unfortunately, I haven't set that up, and I don't have a good Access database to upload. But that's a great scenario, and something I can take offline with you. So email me at grant.earl@neudesic.com, and we can talk about that further. But I have done it in the past, and it really is just as simple as uploading it to the Access service application. Any other questions, folks? Okay. Well, it's been my pleasure giving you this webcast and demonstration, and thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing from any of the attendees regarding SharePoint 2010 or SharePoint Mobility. Thanks very much.
Okay, and thanks so much, Grant. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a quick survey that we ask for you to fill out before you log off. And it's just a question about whether you'd like to receive info after the webcast. And if you could just please fill that up directly in the main slide window before you log off, that will give us valuable feedback. And also, I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for attending, and also thanks to Grant for the wonderful presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude today's event. And after you fill out the survey, you can disconnect. Thank you.